7:26 in, no, it's not 7:26, 7:28 in Trinidad and Tobago. Well, in 2014, the St. Dominic's Children's Home received permission from the government to implement a model that is known as the Steppers model, and we will get some information on that as well at the start of our interview. They also developed a behavioral wellness program, moving the home outside the parameters of just another orphanage. The home's continuum of care approach is just a small part of the 150th anniversary celebrations being observed this year. They are hosting a virtual event tomorrow under the theme, A Time to Rekindle, Refresh and Recommit to the Founding Spirit. Well, Sister Arlene Greenidge, manager of the St. Dominic's Children's Home, joins us now. Sister Arlene, thanks very much for taking the time to join us this morning.
Good morning, Fazir. It's wonderful to be here.
So, lots to celebrate, I suppose, 150 years of service to Trinidad and Tobago.
I have to keep practicing the word. It's our sesquicentennial anniversary, 150 years. So that word will take some getting used to, so I have to practice it. Well, so it's our sesquicentennial anniversary.
Well, I ain't going to even practice. I will leave it for you to say it, because I will trip up all over myself saying it. But even as we talk about that significant achievement, the event that's happening tomorrow, let's give that basic information immediately out there. What time is it going to be? How do people follow the event?
Okay,
what's
great.
going to be happening?
Yeah, so September the 11th, 2021 is the actual anniversary date of the home's founding. We opened our doors in 1871 on that very date. So we are marking a year-long celebration. It's a jubilee. So it's a jubilee year for us, 150 years. And so we're marking the start of that jubilee year with, of course, the Eucharistic celebration, Mass. So we have Mass at 10 a.m. here at St. Dominic's Children's Home tomorrow. Please God, again, because as you said, because of the COVID-related restrictions, we have just a few people in the chapel. So it's largely going to be shared. People are going to gather around the Eucharistic table virtually. So that's 10 a.m. tomorrow, please God. Our children are not going to be physically there at that celebration. So they will have their own celebration tomorrow evening at 5 p.m. Same liturgy, but it will be the children themselves will be gathering. Our children are somewhat in a bubble, and so that we thought was the safest way to go.
And as far as the day itself, any specific things that will be taking place as far as highlighting the work of the organization?
We will have lunch. The children will have some activities, but our celebration ends with lunch, with a very small luncheon. But then we have a whole year of activities. You know, the next thing that will be coming up in November would be a seminar. We have been going through so many changes in the residential childcare setting. So over the 150 years, in addition to the internal changes, there have been so much happening in our external practice environment. So we want to bring practitioners and bring some of our stakeholders together and have a conversation. One of the images that we've been using as we reflect upon this Jubilee is the image that comes out of the Akan tradition. In their tradition, they speak about something called a sankofa, a bird. I don't know if you've ever heard about the sankofa.
Yes.
And the sankofa is this bird that, as the bird flies forward, it's looking backward, and there's an egg in its beak. And the concept is that you know, when we're moving into these new experiences, these new spaces, there are things that we have to go back and retrieve, you know. And so we want to bring people together throughout this year in different ways. So the Mass on Saturday is the very first step. The next is in November, where we gather together as practitioners to reflect and see what have we lost. You know, what do we have to go back and get as we move forward into this new dispensation of residential childcare.
And the activities tomorrow, Sister Arlene, are going to be live on YouTube?
It will be, yes, it will be streamed live on YouTube, on our Facebook page as well, and our newly set up web page, stdominiCschildren'shome.org. So people have options in terms of how and where they can view tomorrow morning's Mass.
COVID-19 has affected all of us in many different ways. How has that impacted the institution?
Well, we have all these protocols that don't help to promote that kind of homey environment, because of course we now have to have the distancing. Even the children's residences, there has to be maintained that level of physical distancing. One of the biggest, I think, ways in which it has negatively impacted is the curtailing of our parental visits. The curtailing of our, sorry about that, Lizzie. The curtailing of our parental visits. So the children, even though we've been maintaining their engagement with their parents and the members of their family systems, you know, on the FaceTime and that kind of thing, it's not quite the same as, you know, being able to see and to touch and to speak to directly. So I think that the distancing, I think, is the most challenging. The children are also online, as you know, for their schooling, and that works well for some children and it doesn't for others. We have been blessed by being able to provide them with the facility and some measure of support. So you have, you know, the parent, there's caregivers, parent substitutes sitting on with them and that kind of thing. So I think the negative impact hasn't been as heavy in terms of schooling, but certainly that contact, that face-to-face, touch contact with family members and significant others.
Well, I hope that person that you just heard, I don't know if you hung up on them or if they're still listening to the conversation. It's not some significant person that you were supposed to be speaking to this morning, but I suppose that conversation will take place at another time. But in my introduction this morning to our dialogue, I referenced the Steppers model and developing a behavioral wellness program. Can you just elaborate on those for us?
Okay, so back in 2008, our board inaugurated a change and transformation process in DOMINIC'S. There were all kinds of push factors. Externally, there were laws changing. The system was now becoming regulated. You had to be licensed with the Children's Authority. So there were those elements. But internally, there was a keen sense in which we knew we weren't meeting the needs of a changing population. We were seeing more and more children presenting with trauma and loss. Or maybe, let me reframe that. Maybe it wasn't they were more presenting with, but we were now mindful and aware of it, because of course with practice, training, it opens your eyes and helps you to see the things differently. And so we recognized that we had to change. And so through this process, this change and transformation process that started all the way back in 2008, in 2014, we approached our line ministry at the time and asked that this new model, which was really based on a number of shifts that was taking place within the environment, and this model be accepted, the Steppers model. And it's 7 principles, core principles really. The two or three key principles would be: 1, it's strengths-based, that we recognize that our children are resilient. The children who come into the system, they have bounceability. And therefore, we have to focus on strengths and not be so obsessed and taken up with the problems and the pathology, and that becomes where the focus is. So, because the language is important. So when you use a language of strengths, the self-fulfilling prophecy you're promoting is a prophecy built based on what they are capable of, what they have the capacity for. The second principle that I think is pretty key is that of permanency. But children need permanency, they need family, either the family of origin, if it's possible to work with that family and bring them up to a place where they're not necessarily perfect families, but good enough families. If we're able to do that, that is really what our children need. They need permanency. And if it's not permanency through reunification with their families of origin, permanency through maybe there's an NGO that speaks about a second chance family, you know. And if not that, at least permanency of relationships. And the third of the 7 principles that I think is pretty key is it was the need to shift to a relationship that was not based on power and control. Do as I say, not as I do, right? That was not based on power and control, but a relationship based on relationship that is trauma loss sensitive. And so the government, the ministry did allow us to move into this new model, which is still unfolding, and that really is what the Steppers model is all about. Now back to the strengths-based approach. Even within the mental health literature, there has been a distinct shift from a focus on mental illness to behavioral wellness. Again, language is so important. And so we had found, because we had swung too far on the side of pathology, again, this whole thing with mental illness and medication, and children had all kinds of not so very funny jokes around it about mad pills and stuff like that. And so, again, coming out of this whole transformation process, there has been that shift to behavioral wellness. So we now have one of our 3 service centers here at Dominic's Children's Home is a Veritas Center. And one of the units we have here at our Veritas Center is an assessment and behavioral wellness unit. Now, again, a lot of the work to be done in the behavioral wellness unit will be group work, small groups. And because of the COVID-19 restrictions again, that has sort of slowed down the developments within that particular unit.
Sister Arlene, sorry to jump in on you.
We are engaging the government in, and we are fully committed to promoting through our Veritas Center behavioral wellness.
Sister Arlene, time is running out on us very, very quickly, but I appreciate that there's so much that is happening, so much being done, so much, God willing, still to happen in relation to the organization. But indeed, congratulations on 150 years of the organization.
Thank you so much. Let me hear you say it, not Fazil. Centennial anniversary.
I can't say it. No. Okay. You take all the points this morning, and indeed the coverage of the celebrations will be tomorrow on YouTube as well. Thank you very much, Sister Arlene, for taking the time to do
that. Thank you so much. Blessings, Fazil.
You're welcome indeed. Sister Arlene Gridage with us this morning. Sesquicentennial. I think that's how it is. You could have a simpler way to say 150. Oh gosh, man. 740 in Trinidad and Tobago. It's not her fault, of course. That is how the language and the people come up with these things. Sesquicentennial. Anyway, here's an image captured by Pastor Rolex Johnson of Speyside in Tobago, and it's a very nice image as well. Now for an image from Angela of Chaguanas. These look like orchids, don't they? Yeah, I think they are orchids, and nice variety of orchids as well at 7:41 as we go to the break.